Well, hello everyone and welcome to my library. Or rather, actually no, it's my reading nook. My name is Cinzia DuBois and today we're having a more fun, chatty Halloween Q&A. Because if you'll forgive me, I've done 5 video essays this month, which are all in the back end still because that's how the back end works. And it's been quite intense, so I thought rather than do a 6th, I hope you don't mind if I just work on this. Hello, we're joined by a white little fluff as well. So I asked you online to ask me anything Halloween, spooky, bookish related. So thank you for everyone who replied on Instagram. I'm going to answer all of them. The first question I was asked is, if you could date any Edgar Allan Poe character, who would it be? None of them. They're all quite disturbing. No, I don't think any of them. I don't think I'd want any of them, thank you. Someone has asked for my favourite books in dark academia. And probably not the answer people were wanting. Basically, it's still The Secret History, but it is only The Secret History for me. I read The Secret History when I was 22 years old because it was the launch of the Birmingham Library. I was part of the magazine, the zine creator team for that, and I was invited to the opening. And as I was browsing the shelves, I came across The Secret History, and I never heard of it before. And I read it in like 2 days. I devoured it. I absolutely loved it. It's been 11 years since I've read The Secret History. It may be bloody awful for all I know now. And then when it comes to dark academia, no one's really hit it. I suppose because it's become a bit of a selling point. It's a bit like classical Greek myth retellings. In my opinion, none of them are very good. If at all. And maybe I've just become more marred by them as someone who's doing them for her PhD thesis topic. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, So I feel like the same with dark academia. I'm going to try it. I suppose some things would fall into dark academia that were invented or written, or rather not invented, before that came a term. So things like Black Chalk by Yeats and not the Yeats, it's Christopher Yeats, I couldn't remember his first name. That would be now classed as probably dark academia. So there are things that have been written as intended to be, projected as a dark academic novel to fit into that theme on TikTok, and there are people whose books are the establishment, like The Secret History, but weren't intended to be dark academia. Interestingly though, we have a question related to dark academia. So it says, what's your definition of dark academia as a literary notion? Is it an independent genre? I would say first, no, I wouldn't call it an independent genre, because then we'd have so many genres. There'd be classical retellings. Dark academia is a theme, it's thematic. And then again, it can go into multiple genres. So say it's a dark academic romance, it would go into the romance genre, but it can also be a horror or a true crime. It can vary in what genre it would come as. I think it's thematic, very similar to, classical Greek retellings. It's a very popular trend, but I wouldn't call it its own genre. Speaking of dark academic books, someone has asked, have I read Babel, An Arcane History of Oxford Translators' Revolution yet by R.F. Kuang? Yes, I have, and I hated it. I read it a couple of years ago, and I've written an extensive Goodreads review in which I just went crazy into everything I disliked about this book on every single level, and it's probably too much for me to reiterate here, but I know quite a few people have liked that review, so I'm clearly not alone in disliking that book. I have had lots of questions about personal paranormal experiences. So people have asked me, do I believe in ghosts and spirits? And other people have asked me about personal paranormal experiences. And I kind of have an answer for both, but hold on, before we get into that, let me just actually run over here to get this first. So, as we dive deeper into the dark corners of history and literature, the spine-tingling tales from old, I need to warn you about a lurking danger that you must always be aware of. Online threats. Just like the ghouls of forgotten stories, hackers and data thieves are waiting to pounce when you least expect it. But you know what's scarier than a haunted house? Browsing the internet completely unprotected. Which is why I keep my connection secured with today's sponsor, NordVPN. It's like my own little digital invisibility cloak, hiding my online activity from prying eyes. Whether I'm reading rare spooky books from dark archives or watching horror films that I totally won't regret later, I know that I'm safe. No creepy hackers are peeking in thanks to NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro, which blocks websites that are fake, malicious, or used for phishing, fraud, or scams. What's more, it keeps me up to date with any unreported data leaks, letting me know if they've found any of my information on the dark web, the scariest place of all. Plus, with NordVPN, you can even unlock content in other countries. So if your Halloween movie marathon is missing a few classics, a quick server change and you've got access to a whole new realm of terrifying tales. So before you go digging into ancient myths or ghost stories, make sure your internet connection is as secure as your haunted house. Use my link in the description box down below and get an exclusive deal with NordVPN. Try it risk-free and get a 30-day back money guarantee. Trust me, it's scarier not to. Oh, okay, now we have sorted that out. Let's get into the question of paranormal and ghosts and things like that, because obviously, as someone who's talking a lot about the paranormal in terms of like history and monsters and ghouls and things like that, people are interested. Personally, no, I don't believe in ghosts, though I have had experience and I know of experiences that would make people believe that I did believe in ghosts. So I think it would be cool if they existed. If there's any one thing I could iterate into existence, it would be like ghosts. I say all this with, obviously I jest with how playful I handle this topic. If you are someone who believes in that or you have spirituality in some way, please know that I respect your opinions. It's just nothing that I've really invested like into. I've never felt it myself. But I respect people do believe in the paranormal, whether that's with religious, like in angels and things like that, or more atheistic ideas of the afterlife. Anywho, that being said, my first experience of what would be a bit weird is that when I was 11 years old, I had a history teacher who I really loved, and I had a dream about her one night that I was in a history museum with her on a class trip, and we're all playing away, and then there's like a big noise and an ambulance comes and takes my history teacher away, and then the police come and they apologise and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Mrs. E has died. She's died of cancer." And I woke up from the dream going, "Oh, that's really horrible. What a nasty dream." But Mrs. E had like taught us that day in school, kind of thing. So it wasn't, something that was on my mind. But when I went into school that day, Mrs. E didn't teach the history class. And that was really odd. And then Mrs. E continued to not teach the history class, and again and again and again. And then eventually, after like 3 weeks, we got informed that she was being treated for chemotherapy for breast cancer. But thankfully, unlike my dream, she didn't die, she survived. But maybe she'd even hinted at it, I don't know. Maybe she'd said something very subtle that I'd picked up on as an 11-year-old child and then put two and two together in my head, in my subconscious. I can't really explain it, but no one knew about it. The parents were informed a week before we were, because they said, over the weekend, please prepare yourselves, we're going to tell children this. But, aside from that, they weren't aware, so no one knew, but maybe she had said something or hinted, whatever. The other one that happened more paranormal-ish, that happened to me, was recently, a few months ago. So I was at my partner's house. My partner lives by the sea. And I was having a really bad day, I had a bad mental health day and I was just in a black place. There's nothing that had particularly triggered it. I just go through moments sometimes where I'm just like, I can't feel anything and it feels a bit numb. And thankfully he had his friends over, so they were just playing games and just chilling, and I said, I hope you don't mind, but I want to go for a little bit of a walk to try and feel something, try and get out of my dark place. So it's around 1:45, but because it's summer, and it's, everyone's still partying, even though it's quite dark out. People were still on the beaches, they were having bonfires, it was quite a populated area, so I didn't feel alone, and I suddenly didn't feel like I was isolated. And where my partner lived, I went on this big walk, and there's a big pier, and this pier is basically bench central. There must be well over 100 benches along this pier, and they are not for sitting on, really, they are primarily memorial benches. And it's all very well lit. There's all street lights over every single bench, so it's not like I'm walking in darkness. It's completely well lit. And I went along the pier and I sat there on one of the benches for a while. And then as I went to go, I saw a couple at the end of the pier. And they had a really cute dog. And I was like, oh, that's a really sweet dog. So I'm minding my business, walking towards this couple who are also walking in the same direction as I am, but we're all heading off the pier. And as I'm walking off the pier, I suddenly see a lady on a bench, just like around 10 benches down from me. And I hadn't seen her there, and it kind of creeped me out, because I was like, oh, how long has she been there? I kind of thought I was alone at the end of the pier. So as I passed her, she had this big white puffer coat on, and then also had like whitish blonde hair, kind of up to her butt, but like a chin. But it was just mainly her big white puffer coat that I noticed. So I obviously walked past her, but then as I walked past her, that's when I spotted her. I went, oh, that's weird. And I looked back to look at her, and there was no one there. It was a black bench, and what was there was like a flower pot, but a black flower pot. I took a photograph of it to tell my partner that this weird thing happened, and it was for a woman. Make of that what you will. That's probably the closest I've got to what some would argue is a paranormal experience. I'm arguing it's probably more, I saw a body of light, because I just saw a load of white light in a bubble, and I interpreted it as a puffer coat and a white-haired lady. But that's probably the closest I've ever gotten to it. Janice asked, any fun trick-or-treat stories from my past? Sadly, no. We didn't go trick-or-treating. Particularly where I grew up, which was Birmingham, you don't really let your kids out at night time in Birmingham, particularly in the 90s. Maybe it's better now, I don't really know, but you didn't let your kids out in the night time in Birmingham. It wasn't the nicest place. So I never went trick-or-treating as a child, so I have no stories, sadly. Eric asks, what's your favourite Halloween stories? So I don't think I have a specific Halloween story, but 2 stories come to mind when I think of like my favourite stories. And I think another person has asked me about like frightening stories. Yes, Leslie asked, what was the most frightened you were by reading? And I would say it's probably these 2 stories that come to mind, which aren't specifically Halloween. The first was Thomas Hardy's The Withered Arm, which really creeped me out. Again, I was a young teenager when we read that in school, and it really freaked me. And I don't know why. I need to probably reread it, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And the second one is The Landlady by Roald Dahl. Again, I was mid-teenager at school reading that, and that really creeped me out as well. So Cass asks, favourite Gothic classics, like books, art and architecture, which is a really, really interesting question. Obviously, Edinburgh. I live in Edinburgh because it is Gothic. Like, that's what I love the most about this city, is its Gothic architecture. Everything about Edinburgh I absolutely love. So yes, it's my favourite thing of Gothic architecture is just Edinburgh in general. As for Gothic books, what is my favourite of them? I'm going to say something very controversial. I'm not really a fan of Frankenstein or Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm just saying it. I didn't really find those books interesting to read. I love the culture they've created, but I really disliked Dracula. And I was kind of meh about Frankenstein. So that's my controversial take. I suppose what would class as Gothic, potentially the picture of Dorian Gray. Whilst it's not traditional, like what you don't think of it because it's not atmospherically Gothic. It's more culturally Gothic, I would argue. Picture Dorian Gray, probably. I do love Edgar Allan Poe's works, particularly just the Telltale Heart and things like that do get to me. So yes, I would say The Raven, obviously. So I mean, it sounds very basic though, doesn't it? It's very basic. Ooh, and Jamaica Inn and Rebecca. No, I lie. Jamaica Inn. I just looked at my book list. Jamaica Inn and Rebecca, I would say also. I would class as Gothic fiction, and primarily Jamaica Inn. I prefer Jamaica Inn over Rebecca, and I love those books. I love Jamaica Inn. Yes. Highly recommend. Oh, sweet. Someone just said, no questions. I just wanted to say I look forward to your videos and I'm so proud of how hard you work. Thank you. This month has been rough because how it works is when you make a video and if there's a sponsor in it, you have to wait for the AOK from the sponsor, which can take ages. It can take weeks sometimes. So I have videos that I've been working on and they're sitting there waiting for the AOK and it's been really intense. So thank you for that, I really appreciate that. And also, oh, bless, another one saying nothing to ask, just want to say that you're fab. Thank you, that's very kind of you. Was horror genre always popular and well received, or have they become classics over time? Oh, no, I would argue horror's, I mean, so again, I've just done a video on Edgar Allan Poe, and we talk about how he was well received, but his most popular, most well-read book was not one of his Gothic books. It was The Golden Bug, which is more an adventure book. And there's always been pockets of people very invested in horror and Gothic, and obviously Dracula itself was incredibly popular. So I'm not saying it's something that's become more popular over time. I think what would have happened is just pure, again, social interests wane in the same way that we are waning through a dark academia trend, in the same way we have waned through classical retellings and classical reception. It is not, classical reception seems to have a boom right now, mainly due to mass publishing and just leaning in on something that's trending online, not necessarily the quality of the literature. But classical reception has always been a thing. James Joyce's Ulysses was popular back in the day, and it's classical reception. It's not something that's saying that it's brand new because it's more popular now or there's more of it. I would only say the limitations were potentially the sensitivities of the society at the time of publishing. So again, I would say Gothic literature had its limitations based on just purely what they could get away with writing about and knowing it would get published, or what would get censored and what would not get censored. And removed by book editors. So that was something to consider. We have way more freedom nowadays. Obviously I can't speak of other cultures there, but you know, those kind of limitations, like religious limitations, would have played a role in limiting what could be published and how it could get published and what would be popular, particularly if it was like sacrilegious. So again, it's not to say it wasn't popular in terms of if it would have been popular back then, but how society would have perceived it would have been different. Will asks, best things to do in Edinburgh in autumn. I would say I love going on long walks in Edinburgh. The nature of Edinburgh is beautiful in autumn. So going up the Pentland Hills, going to art galleries in autumn is lovely. Going to the graveyards, visiting those in the daytime is lovely. You don't have to do a nighttime tour to, you know, see the graveyards in Edinburgh. I love walking in autumn. I think it's my favourite thing to do in Edinburgh, more so than spring and summer, because everyone's there and it's sunny and gross, whereas I like it when it's a little bit muddy, a little bit slippy, and damp leaves crunching on the floor. Have I ever read any of A. Merritt's books? I have not, I'm afraid. I don't think I've even heard of any of them. It's probably like a niche level, but I will look into it. If you have any recommendations, let me know. And a few of these are more things that I'd have to talk about in a video. Someone's asked about how much did private asylums play a role in the Gothic novel? That sounds like a really cool video. I will happily look into that for a video for you. Someone's asked about Mexican literature and legends. I've talked about South American, but not really Mexican specifically. I will look into that because, again, it's not my forte. Because I don't speak Spanish as well. I am very limited on the fact that I don't speak languages. And I've got a video that I'm scripting at the moment where I have to speak a little bit of ancient Greek, and of course I don't know ancient Greek, and I'm already dyslexic, so I'm already butchering the English language when I'm reading my scripts, even with words I know how to pronounce. If I'm reading them, I will read them differently and say them out loud and not even know I've said them out loud differently than normal, because it's just how dyslexia works. And I'm very scared when it comes to different languages as well, because I'm already struggling with English, let alone other languages that I've never learned. So that's why I tend to stay away from other cultures, purely because, not out of disrespect, it's purely I don't want to really bloody ruin their languages and mess it up. And like write it down phonetically and listen to other people say the words online. It's not like I don't do that research, but when it comes to reading a script, even my phonetic spelling doesn't give me any clues, because I've still forgotten how to say it from even my phonetic breakdown. So that's why I tend to stay away from things like that. But I'll look into it to see if there's anything I can potentially touch on without butchering the language and the culture. Also, someone's asked about Victorian mourning. I will do a video on Victorian mourning. Absolutely, I will. Trust me, I've never even thought about doing that. I love that idea. Someone says, do you dress up your dogs for Halloween? I do not dress up my dogs for Halloween, because I don't really dress up for Halloween either. I would like to, but I tend to only dress up in things that I already own, because I don't like the waste of things. You know, buying things that you'll only wear once, I really resent. So the same for the dogs. Obviously they could wear multiple things for multiple Halloweens, no one's going to really care, but one of them hates wearing a harness, let alone anything else, and the other one will wear Christmas jumpers but look really sad at me. So I haven't bought anything for Halloween for them, but I don't go out on Halloween usually, I just stay in. So it's not really worth buying something if they're not going to wear it again. And one of the final questions here is just saying my favourite books. My favourite books are still kind of the same as they always have been for a long time. It's still Moby Dick, and it's still Hermann Hesse, Steppenwolf, and the Complete Cosmic Comics by Italo Calvino. They are still my top three when anyone asks. I also really love Secret History, but you know, maybe I haven't really touched in fiction for a long time. I tend to really only read non-fiction nowadays because I'm just reading. articles, like journal published articles online constantly for work. I'm not really reading for fun much anymore. I tend to just listen to non-fiction podcasts and audiobooks, and that's really it, which is a bit sad. But maybe after my PhD is done, that can change. Hopefully, ideally, I would love that to happen, but I have another 3 more years of that. So it's going to be 6 years of not really reading books to establish, I mean, reading books, but not in the way I used to read books. But hopefully I get back into it. But thank you so much for allowing me to do a more relaxed video where I'm not having to script excessive amounts and look at my computer screen. It really hurts. I spend all my day, 7 days a week, looking at a computer screen, and it really hurts my eyes. So not having to, just having a break from the computer screen is quite nice. You know, I wake up and I sit at my computer desk until 3 in the morning, and then I go to sleep, and then I repeat and repeat and repeat. So it's really nice to not have to do that for a video. But except for when I have to edit this now. Yes. But thank you so much for watching and for supporting me, and thank you as always for my Patreons, and I'll see you soon for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.